When people come into your business, you have to assume they know nothing. And so we tell our team all the time, I don't want a franchise. We're not looking to franchise Pie Bar, but I want to run this as if we are.
On this episode of the Late Night Startup Show, we are speaking with Lauren and Cody of Pie Bar. Pie Bar is out of Woodstock, Georgia. That's where the brick and mortar is, and they have some of the most delicious pies that I've ever had in my life. The pumpkin pie was absolutely to die for, and they have pot pies as well, and they're going into a couple of other businesses, all surrounding pie, and it was a very interesting conversation with them. Lauren worked at the state capitol for quite some time, and Cody also had his corporate 9-to-5 as well. They always knew that they wanted to be in business for themselves and start their own business. They just weren't sure what that business was going to look like. But Lauren loved making pies, Cody loved building the business, and now they have a very successful pie bar in Woodstock, Georgia. So let's get into that conversation. But first, we got to thank our sponsors, RCR Video Marketing Group, an Atlanta-based multifaceted video production company creating compelling content to fast forward your business, and Digits in Motion. Digits in Motion is a full-stack digital agency. Rob from Digits in Motion is helping me with some websites, a couple of app ideas. They are just completely talented, really good people, and they really care about the end product, not just making a buck. They really want to put all of their talents and efforts forward to help you build and grow your business. So check out Digits in Motion. And now let's get into the great conversation that we had with Lauren and Cody. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a while since we've done an episode because we were talking beforehand. We just moved into a new studio, so I've been super focused on like building that out and taking kind of a little hiatus from doing the episodes. So it feels great to come back, especially coming up to Woodstock. It's like, and then you come in, it's 9 a.m., 9:20, and you get the fresh smell of pie, and it just smells so good in here. And anyone who's listening on the audio side, it's gorgeous in here. I love how bright and white, and we actually put up like a lot of the industrial style shelves in our new office. So it's just, I love it. It looks great in here.
Thank you very much.
So how did you? First of all, how did you end up doing pies? How did you get to doing pies as a business? And maybe walk me through why you chose Woodstock. We talked a little beforehand, but I think it's interesting why you chose Woodstock.
Yeah, well, so right out of college, Cody and I got normal jobs. He was working in construction up in Jasper, and I was working down in Atlanta at the state capitol. And for several years, that was great. We really enjoyed what we were doing, but I guess we always kind of felt like something was missing. I think a normal person would be like, well, then let's get a dog or have a baby. But we were like, well, we should probably just...
We already had a dog.
Yeah, we already had a dog. We weren't ready for a baby. So we were like, well, let's just, do something fun. And so I had started baking pies. I had always really enjoyed cooking and food and baking. And I started baking so many pies that Cody was starting to say, like, this is getting a little pricey. Like,
you have to buy like another refrigerator or something.
What are you going to do with all these pies? Your coworkers don't want to eat that much pie. And so he was like, well, why don't you try and sell it at a market? And so I set up a little table at a junk show down in actually the Woodstock Antique Market. And
it's not a slide. It's actually called like Junk Days.
Yeah, it's called Junk Days. And started selling pie. And so it kind of grew from me just baking for family and friends to doing any type of show possible. So I would do the antique shows. I would do the farmers markets. Downtown Woodstock puts on so many events. And so I would show up at all of those events and sell pie. And, I got into the Jasper Farmers Market and the Marietta Farmers Market. And it got to the point where it was just too many markets. And Cody was able to say, well, like, are you making any money? Like, let's look at this reasonably and see, is this actually a business? And he was able to turn my hobby into a business. And it gave me an opportunity to make pie full time, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and a little bit privy to that. So like we thought we wanted to have our own business and we didn't really know what it was. Lauren's kind of been the one with the idea. So it was going to be a clothing line at one time. I mean, we've had
clearly that wouldn't have worked out. It was pajama casual.
Yeah, pajama casual.
I
But it's kind of been some different things, but she's always just enjoyed pie. So she kind of honed in on that. And really the crust, I think, is what really got into that. But how we ended up in Woodstock is what she did. She started doing all these different markets, and then it got to the point where she needed help. So I started helping her do markets, and Woodstock is where it just stuck. I mean, we did some stuff in Marietta and Kennesaw and Ackworth and Jasper. And then we did studies too on the area. And, Woodstock was the most promising in terms of growth and things like that over the next 5 years.
All of those other communities were great to be in. Everybody was so kind and really supportive of people saying they wanted to start their own business. But the people in Woodstock really showed up for us. They would come to the farmers market and buy pie. And then later that afternoon, we would set up at a concert downtown, and then they'd buy pie again.
Really? Wow.
Even though they didn't necessarily want that much pie, they were just so excited.
It was like a community. So like the other ones, you might sell to somebody on a Saturday and you might not see them for 4 weeks. Here we'd sell to somebody on a Saturday and we'd see them that next Saturday, or we'd sell to them Saturday morning at the market, and then we'd see them again, Saturday night at the concert. Yeah. I think people that come out and spend their time in downtown spend a lot of time in downtown. It's not normally just like every now and then. It's a community.
It's a community
feeling
within itself, and they want to support people that are trying new things and that are wanting to create their own businesses. And I think that's really special. I think that's really cool.
Well, I think it's interesting that you guys said that you knew you wanted to start your own business. I feel like a lot of people maybe fall into business. They don't really know that they want to be entrepreneurs. They just kind of find a hobby, and then eventually that grows. Sounds like you guys kind of had a mixture of both.
I think so too. I mean, she started baking out of passion to bake, and then not long after that, we kind of decided, okay, if this is going to be a business, like what does it take to get it to that next step? So,
and was this before you guys started going to like the farmers markets and stuff that you had this thought, or?
Well, kind of, sort of, yes. Like I said, it always kind of bounced around that we wanted to have something, and we hit that stage in our life where even though we had good jobs, it was like we want something else. So anything we did like that we could find that was fun to us, if we could make money off of that, that was something. So a little bit of both. I wouldn't say we necessarily fell into it because we were
intentional about it.
Yeah. Right.
I think our stories are a little bit different in the sense of Cody right out of school got a job where he was managing essentially himself and other individuals right away. He was in construction management and managed projects and was able to be part of a small business and see how that runs and operates and works. And so he got a taste of that freedom, essentially, of being your own boss and working towards a purpose. Whereas I was on a different side. Working in state government is really great. I really enjoyed it. But it's a different experience. You're not able to kind of just say, I want to do this and do it. There's a lot of red tape, and it turns out I'm a pretty bad employee, I think. And so I was constantly wanting to do things that I wasn't allowed to do, or I had to ask permission of multiple people, and it just drove me crazy. I really wanted to be in a situation where I said, well, if I want to do this, I'm just going to do it. I think that comes with being one of 4 kids, probably, and the only girl. I felt like I always got my way, and I wanted to continue that in my career.
Still gets your way.
So I think the only way that was going to happen was to create my own business.
Yeah.
So. Well, now you get your way and get to make money getting your way. So that's
one day I will get to make money getting our way. That's the everybody's always saying like, y'all are doing great. I'm like, sure, Pie Bar is doing great. Lauren and Cody, we're doing okay.
Well, can we dive into that a little bit?
Of course.
I mean, obviously you're brick and mortar.
Right.
Yeah.
You have several people in your kitchen right now prepping for the day. So why would you say that Pie Bar is doing great, but Lauren and Cody are doing okay?
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of get it. So like I said, we were in both of those jobs and we made really good money before. So we made really good money doing a lot less work, I guess is kind of where that goes. Having a small business, it is tough, and you don't really understand all the expenses associated till you get in there in terms of just keeping a place operating and maintain and taxes. I mean, taxes are a killer.
No,
they're an absolute killer. And so I think that's it. I think, Lauren works, I know, about 80 hours a week, for a fraction of what we used to make when we worked 40 hours a week. So that's probably where that comes in. But, one thing we found is you can't necessarily measure success on volume. More pie is more money, and more money is more problems. We might make the same margins on selling 10 pies as we would on 100 pies because you have to buy more ingredients, you have to hire more people to make those pies. And, we've always kind of done a benchmark on what we do for Thanksgiving based on maybe what other people do for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And we might sell 100 pies and make the same amount of money that somebody makes selling 10,000 pies, or at least in terms of margins and portions. So
I think it's just something that we didn't recognize either. It's understanding that businesses, of course, are there to make money, but that money doesn't immediately go into our pockets or our bank accounts. We have 10 employees. We have to pay them first. We have a retail space in probably one of the most expensive metro Atlanta areas. We have to pay our rent. We have a lot of expenses that go into making our place great for our guests and making it great for our team members. We want them to enjoy coming here. So we want to buy them the newest fun things to bake with and to use so that they continue to come back every day. And so I think it's just understanding, sure, we're selling lots and lots of pie, but if we sell a $28 pie, we're not putting $28 in the bank. We're getting a portion of that, and that is being then distributed amongst all of those other things. And I think that's probably true in most industries, that your overhead can tend to soak up a lot of those revenues coming in.
Totally.
And you would think that making pie was cheap, but it turns out it's pretty expensive.
It's a skillet.
Right. Well, and then so you've got the things like wanting to keep employees having the best equipment, but it's also just, you might have a fridge that goes down. That's not a fun expense. It's not nice, new, shiny stuff. It's just repairing something that you already have to keep maintained. So, in terms of that, though, we can't complain. We're in a business where we only sell one item, and pie is not a necessity, and people have shown up to support us and allow us to have a business.
That's good. Well, earlier you were talking about your job at the Capitol, and you said you kind of always had this itch of like the freedom of being on your own or entrepreneur. But everything you've said since that statement, it takes the freedom part out of that.
Absolutely.
Right? And I was watching Shark Tank. Every entrepreneur turns on Shark Tank for background noise. And Lori on there said something super interesting to me. She said, a real entrepreneur will work 80 hours a week to prevent from working 40.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that statement was just like so profound to me. I was like, it is so true.
I think go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, once you kind of get, and this is, we've been open here for a little over 3 years now, working that same schedule. I don't know what we would do if we only worked 40 hours a week. We would stare at a wall and wonder what we're supposed to be doing. Lauren, too, has I'll call it a complex. If somebody's here working, an employee's working, she feels like she needs to be here working too.
That's a good trait to have.
It is a good trait to have. It wears on you over time, but it's a good trait to have. But honestly, I don't know how, once you kind of step into this way of life and working that much, I don't know how you could just go back to not doing it anymore.
Yeah. I think when I left my job with the state, we had an exit interview. And so I sat down with the HR department and they said, well, why are you leaving? Are you leaving for a job with more money? I said, no, definitely not. And they're like, is it better hours? I said, like, absolutely not. I'm actually making less money and working more hours.
More
but I feel
responsibility.
Like, more responsibility. But I feel like we're working towards something that we want to, something that we've created. And if it ever gets to a point where we don't like what we see, we have the authority to change that. And I think that's really special and really cool. And a lot of people ask us all the time, well, what's it like being your own boss? And I don't think we are our own bosses. I think now I have 10 bosses, because if one of them calls in sick, I'm the one who's going to fill in for them. Or if one of them has an issue, I'm the one that's going to help. But that being said, I get to choose them. I get to choose those people that I work with every day. Whereas when I didn't own my own business, I was at the mercy of whatever my supervisor chose.
Yeah, and people talk a lot about freedom of owning your own business, having freedom, and to me, I don't think freedom necessarily means free time. So, like to us or to me, freedom is the ability to get our own success based on our input. So that's freedom to me. Is if we want to be successful, you just work harder.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't always go that way, but more times than not, at least we're working towards something that, we want to.
It's freedom of a true pursuit of happiness, I guess. Like you get to really evaluate yourself, where you're at business wise, where you want to go. And like you said, it's not at the mercy of other people. Even if people are perfectly happy in their day job, in their 9 to 5, all it takes is one new boss or one decision to completely ruin that. And I love what you said about, you have 10 bosses. You didn't go into business to be your own boss or to wear that badge of honor, if you can even call it that. You're answering to your employees, to your customers.
Every day.
So much more responsibility. Does that ever get stressful on you guys as individuals, but even more so your relationship as husband and wife?
I always joke that Cody is my worst employee.
Well, it's a joke, but it's true.
And the bad thing is he's unfireable, I guess.
You'd think. We'll see. I think that it's definitely stressful. It's stressful individually because you're thinking about when I make a decision, it's affecting 10 others. So, of course, that weighs on both of us as individuals. I would say the stress between the two of us will come when that I sometimes forget that we're partners and I can be a touch bossy. And so
awesome.
So I'll forget that, we're 50-50. I can't just make a decision and expect him to follow it blindly, just the same as he would never just make a decision and expect me to follow it blindly. I think we've found that he has his strengths, I have my strengths. And so if we're arguing about something, I'll say, is this really important to you? Yes, it is. Great. I'll give up mine and we'll do it your way. And I think we do that a lot back and forth.
Yeah, we do. We try. And so I've never baked. Like, I'm not a baker. I can work in the kitchen, but I'm not a baker. So, for example, if something comes down to that, my opinion on that weighs very little compared to what Lauren's will. So kind of setting boundaries in terms of that. And we've always been involved in it together. So we've been married 5 years and we've had a business for 3 years. So it's not like it's something that I started and worked in 5 years and then Lauren came in, when I already had this set way of thinking. Like we've learned it all together. And we came in with the mindset of, Lauren worked at Outback for a few months in high school. Like that was our food industry experience. So we didn't come in with a set way of this is how we're going to do it and there's no other way. We came in as like, we're going to try it this way and then pivot or adjust if we need to. And that's always kind of left a free swinging door of, how things are done. Now we've been in it 3 years and we can actually put some policies in place based on our experience, but it's never been like a hard set of rules. It's always been, we're going to go the route that makes the most sense.
I think too, Cody and I, like you said, we've been married for 5 years, but before that, he was my first boyfriend. Like Cody and I dated since we were 16 years old. And so the lines of communication with us are extremely open.
Yeah.
And so if he's feeling something, I immediately know it. And if I'm feeling something, he immediately knows it. And so I think that that's a huge benefit for us because yes, we're business partners, but we're also husband and wife, and we've had years of practicing communicating between the two of us. So I'm not having to learn his personal style. I already know that. And so it's really easier, or not easy, but it's easier for me to go to him and say, like, I don't like the way this was done, or for him to come to me and say the same thing because I know how he's going to react. I know how he's going to take it. And I know that if maybe it's not a good thing, I can approach it in a different way.
So what with your team members and your employees, you said sometimes with Cody, you just say, if this is how you want to do it, or do it that way, even though you may not necessarily agree with it. Do you ever take that same approach with team members as well?
I think so. I would say if you asked me that a year ago, no. I think micromanaging is a severe disease. Yeah. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs suffer from that. And I still find myself doing that. But I know that people that we bring onto our team are so smart and they're so capable. And that's why we brought them onto our team. And so I would say we trust them. We want them to make decisions. Sometimes I don't agree with the decisions, but I'll go back to the office and say like, I don't like the way they did that.
Yeah.
But is it going to affect things? No. It's something simple. Allow them to handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, at first it was a very set, this is how we want you to do it, and this is how you're going to get from point A to point B, just like that. Now that we've kind of stepped back a little bit, it's like, okay, here's A and here's B. Here's the path we want you to go along. But obviously, if it's not going to change the outcome and you feel more comfortable doing it this way,
yeah, we're open to that.
Sure.
I think I found a huge thing I struggled with, and it opened my eyes a lot. Anytime we bring somebody new into our business, it just shines a light on where our weaknesses are. And I found that one of our biggest weaknesses is that our communication. I felt like I was explaining things well to people, but I wasn't. And so I would tell somebody to do something one way, and then one of our managers would tell them to do it a different way, and then they're new. So who do you listen to? Do you listen to the owner? Do you listen to the person who's managing you on a daily basis? And so I think we try and create an open dialogue with our team. The fact that I know that, I think, is really powerful, because now we can say, well, let's go back and fix this. Let's find the right way to do it, and let's all agree on a set way. And just, it's given us an opportunity to allow people to come into our business and influence the business in a positive way. Because not always our ideas are the best ideas. Sometimes their ideas are the best ideas. And so I really like being able to kind of crowdsource that. The flip side of it, sometimes my idea may not be the best idea, but we're going to do it my way.
Hey, you earn the right to do that, and you're the one taking all the risk at the end of the day. So.
And I think because we allow our team to speak up and to bring new ideas, when I say, no, we're doing it this way, that it's accepted.
Yeah. And I guess what you're kind of saying is they know that that's not like the end all be all. Like the next idea that comes up, it may not be your specific idea. How do you, are you just naturally that self-aware in that, of knowing that there's communication, or like, have you done anything intentional to keep your ear to the ground amongst your team, or?
No, and I think it's a learning thing. You know, like I said, when we started, it was, and you gotta, like I said earlier, so we're 3 years in. The first year was survival. Like, will this thing actually make it? The second year was like, okay, we survived the first. Let's try and do what we were doing better, more often.
Well, just to clarify, 3 years in from opening this store? Okay, but you were doing the farmers markets before
about a year or so,
a
year and a half. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was it's a totally different, we're talking about back there, 10 pie, like I say back there, so Market Street's just behind us. It runs parallel to Main Street. And we would do 10 or 12 pies on a Saturday morning compared to, what we're doing now. So, so the first year since we opened, which was September 1st, 2015, it was like, can this actually make it? And then the second year was that, and improving on that. And that third year was really starting to put processes in place so we can keep that from happening, where we're all saying the same thing. Instead of somebody saying one thing and somebody saying something else, we can say, well, this is the process. This is...
We learned by the same way everybody else learns, by losing really great people that we shouldn't have lost, but we did because our processes weren't in place, or by losing a customer because they're not receiving the best product possible. All of those horrible ways are the ways that you learn. I think as we've grown, we've hit those little marks where it's like, oh, man, that was an expensive learning curve. And you're, when you're at the markets, you're like, I lost a whole pie. That was a $25 learning curve. Whereas 3 years in now, we're like, well, that was a $5,000 learning curve. Wow. Like, that really is stressful and painful. But it just shows our growth, and it's showing that we're continuing to allow lessons to come into our life to then influence us, hopefully in a positive way, so that next year we won't have that same mistake. That's kind of, it's definitely a learned process.
So when you say processes in place, like you didn't have any back then, and now you've grown into some a little bit. Well, let's clarify what those processes are.
I'd say even industry standard for us is just simple things like recipes. Our first year, I knew the recipes in my head. And so I didn't understand why employees would need me to tell them the recipes. Yeah. I would tell it to them one time and I couldn't quite understand and gauge, well, why can't you remember this after I've told it to you one time? Why do you need me to write it down? And it sounds so stupid now. That sounds insane. But if you go into any kitchen, you're going to find somebody in there who has worked in a kitchen or who currently is still working in a kitchen where recipes aren't written down. And if they are written down, they're on a Post-it somewhere. We're still coming up with pies that we may have done in our first year that we want to bring back. And our manager and I will be like, well, shoot, I think we wrote it on a Post-it and probably threw it away 3 years ago. Yeah. We're never going to be able to recreate that. Yeah. So even just simple processes like having a recipe book and then standardizing those recipes. So we no longer are scooping out flour, we're weighing everything. Mm-hmm. I would say that's really food specific. But
well, like opening, closing procedures, like in this space we're sitting up here in the front of house, when you close at night, instead of just saying, all right, clean it up, it's like mop, sweep, vacuum.
That to-do list, that checklist.
Yeah, there's a set procedure ways. On how to do it. And what it does, one, is the way it should be done. But two, we are in the food industry. And in the food industry, you're going to have turnover, especially in positions that are seasonal. So how can we make it where we're using our time more wisely and not having to train everyone in so much depth? So now you can say, here's the procedure, and you can teach it to them once, and then they can revert back to that procedure. Mm-hmm. So little things like that like you don't think of. You think, well, just sweep and clean up the front, and then you're done when you're done, and so on and so forth.
It's easy to assume that it's somewhat common sense based, and not saying that it's not common
what's
sense.
What's crazy though is it's not. We've had kids in here who are 16, 17 years old who have never swept anything. That's not That's not a comment on them as an individual. It's just a comment on the fact that you can't assume anything. Right. Mm-hmm. When people come into your business, you have to assume they know nothing. And so we tell our team all the time, I don't want a franchise. We're not looking to franchise Pie Bar, but I want to run this as if we are. I want to make sure every single process is written out so that if I die and Cody decides to sell it as a franchise, that the next people could do it. Or if I'm sick and don't come in, y'all wouldn't know. Like there would be no way of knowing that we're not here.
If we're sick, it's revert to the procedure.
I think our biggest thing we tell them is make us redundant. Like we want to empower our team so much and that they feel so comfortable in the processes and the systems and their authority to make decisions that I'm just the lady who writes their check, basically. Or I'm the one that just like happens to be the one who fills the fridge kind of situation.
Yeah. I would assume as an entrepreneur, creating those type of checklists and to-do lists and, sweep, mop, this, that, it's hard to get excited about that or creating those lists. Or it's not inspiring to even sit down and write that out as a to-do list.
Well, so for me, I'll say I think it's exciting because it's a measure of progress for us. Like it's a measure of progress, and it's a measure of once we get this down, they're not having to come for we're not necessarily that involved anymore in that. So it's a way for us to be able to step back more and grow the business into what we want it to be, and not necessarily have to be there for that. Does that make sense?
So. And we like to go to fun coffee shops, so I get fueled by.
That's kind of
I get to drink coffee while I do it, so I'm fine with it. Yeah. I think.
Well, Lauren's a very big Leslie Knope fan from Parks and Rec. Okay. And the binders and notebooks, that's her thing.
Yeah. But it's so funny because it sounds like in your previous job, it was a lot of that, like list and structures and stuff, which you kind of wanted to get away from, but now you're like having to implement that to grow your business.
Because I have a problem with authority. I think when somebody was telling me to do it, I was like, well, this is horrible. Why do I have to do this? Whereas now I know it has to be done for our business, and so I want to do it, and I'm excited about doing it. And like Cody said, it's a benchmark. It's a measure of progress for us, and I like working. I enjoy my job, and I'm not working to free us up for a ton of free time to do what we please. I'm working, and I think you are too a lot of times, I'm working because I want to work more. So I want to create these processes and these systems so our team feels comfortable in our space and makes it their own space so that then I can grow our business even bigger and work on other really fun, exciting projects.
It keeps the snowball rolling.
It does. Well, and that kind of reverts back, to what we were talking about as far as money goes. I think when you're wrapped up in what everybody else is doing and the kind of money they're making, like it was in our old job, it was really kind of keeping up with the Joneses as far as the house we were living in, the cars we were driving. Once you step out of that, at least for me, money is just a resource for other things that we want. But we really kind of found that we could scale back on personally what we want and need and still be very satisfied, if not more satisfied, with material items, that we're not really necessarily trying to keep up with our peers. Because we're already satisfied in what we're doing on a daily basis.
And that's a very humbling approach to take towards that. I mean, I just feel like everybody, entrepreneur or not, can very easily fall into that trap of just materialistic, the bigger house, the nicer car, and all these things. So you guys purposely scaled those things back?
Purposely and
financially, we just had to.
Yeah,
when we quit our jobs, though, I think it was like, well, this is how much money we have, and I don't know when we're getting a paycheck again. And so, luckily, we didn't have a mortgage when we did that. We didn't have kids. We didn't have anything.
Just a dog.
Just a dog. It turns out he doesn't need that much food.
Scaled back his bag of food.
Scaled back also.
All right, buddy.
So, I mean, we got rid of internet and cable, and we didn't go out. There was no reason for us to spend money because we had no money to spend, but because we were here all the time. And now that we're creating processes and putting things in place, we are technically able to spend more time at home.
Yeah.
And I guess technically we would have a little more money to spend if we wanted to, but we don't.
Yeah, well, I guess what I was getting at is when we made that leap from what we were doing to what we were doing, quality of life didn't change. Maybe the amount of money and the things we were buying lessened, but quality of life didn't change. When we first opened, it was really hard to, after, about 2 months in, when we were just like, we were here all the time, day in, and we'd see people come in Friday night after dinner, like, couples come in. That's what we used to do. Like we would go out to eat dinner on like Friday or Saturday night. And I think we were very envious of that. And it wasn't until a couple of days ago we were talking like, they're maybe having fun and doing what they want to do right then. And I don't know, maybe they're having fun every day. But every day is like that. We're still. It's odd, but we spend every single day together.
Yeah. It's not odd.
It's not. I'm saying it's delightful. Odd. Like, it is very delightful
in comparison to the majority.
Sure,
right.
People,
well, and we fall into that a lot too. I mean, it's really easy to be jealous of what other people have and to see, they're getting to do this fun vacation, or they're getting to buy this new house, or they're getting to do all of these really cool things, or buy whatever they want, and we can't do that. But then I always think about like grass is greener, right? People come up to us and say like, y'all are really doing it, where I was just thinking the same thing about them not 10 minutes before. Yeah. So I think it's just perspective and understanding, like we don't have that kind of cash flow currently to go out and spend it on whatever we want, but that's temporary. It's not for forever. And we just keep working harder, and then we can do what we want.
Well, in the end all be all, I still wouldn't trade it. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for going back to what we were. But I wouldn't trade it. I mean, we enjoy what we do, and I wouldn't trade it.
Well, I really like what you said about your quality of life. Just because you went from the 4-bedroom to the 2-bedroom or whatever,
right.
The quality of your life doesn't have to change.
Right.
Sure.
How happy you are, and how. Even if you're sacrificing a ton, that doesn't necessarily mean that quality of life is changing. And would you consider that some form of like cognitive reframing, or did that just always make sense to you?
Yeah, you're getting out of my vocabulary right now.
But I would say mindset.
No, I'm fooling with you. I mean, I think maybe money can buy things that make you more comfortable, but that was all more of an internal thing. Like I said, as far as quality of life, for me, it wasn't. Maybe we were driving. I had a truck that had heated seats, and now I don't have heated seats, but that doesn't affect the way I live life. It maybe makes things a little more comfortable and a little more easy.
Yeah.
I think so, though. But I think it's just understanding and being aware. Like, I'm not going to put myself in a situation now. I know myself. I know I'm going to be jealous if I see something where somebody's doing something I want to do. I mean, I'm human. Of course, I'm going to be jealous about that. So I don't put myself in that situation. I try and be aware that if I can't afford to do that right now, why am I going to spend time on Instagram looking at that one specific thing? Yeah. I think some people could use it as fuel, but for me, I don't. I see it as like, well, this is what I'm missing out on. So I think it's just that, is understanding kind of where my faults are and then trying to avoid those things.
Yeah.
My wife and I just put up a vision board in our closet, I mean, like 2 weeks ago. And we have like the home that we want to be in within the next 5 years. And then certain business goals for me that she printed out and put up there. And just, there's like, I don't know, 5 or 6 different pictures. And but when you say it that way, I'm like,
But but what you're talking about is different. I think what you're talking about is goal setting and manifesting. And I think the word manifest is really creepy, but I love it also. I think that goal setting is so important. And we do that. Or I have a book, and in that book I write down, this is my short-term goal. This is my long-term goal. I sit down with all of our team members and say, what do you want to get out of this? What's your goal this quarter? What are you looking to do?
Asking them as individuals.
Like, I don't care if it has anything to do with Pie Bar or personally. If your goal is to travel to Europe, like, well, how can we help you get there? I think that's very different than spending time obsessing over things that aren't going to happen. I think setting goals are fantastic, and we do that. I've got a goal for Pie Bar. I know what I want to get out of Pie Bar. I've got a goal for all of our team. I've got a goal for us personally. But I think that that's different than, say, y'all want to buy a really great house or build a house, and you set that goal and then you're working towards that. That's very different than you driving around and feeling jealousy and feeling envious of other people.
Or looking at the Bora Bora honeymoons that we haven't been on
that's
yet.
That's completely different. I think that what y'all are doing is great.
Well, and I think too, for our goals, we try and reach in and find out like what we actually want, opposed to maybe what's expected of us to want. And that's something we've had to look at from a business standpoint too, and from a personal standpoint is we try and make decisions based on what we want, opposed to what we think people want from us. So not necessarily always being, I guess, what you're expected to be, but our goals, we look at them and what do we personally, what do we actually want? So now is a fun time because we can look at the business and say, okay, out of all the things we're doing, what are some things that we enjoy? What are some things we don't enjoy? And then how do we do more of what we enjoy and still make money from that? I think it's kind of tough. And when we first opened, we would be here all the time. Lauren would be in the kitchen. I ran the front counter, and that almost became expected that, when a customer comes in, that I'm at the counter and Lauren's rolling dough in the back. And, real life, you can't grow and still be like that. But people almost get a sense of you're selling out if you're not there anymore. And even though that's not the case, that's kind of the perspective that gives off. But it's little decisions you have to make like that. Like, is this what I want, or is this what I think someone else wants for me? And then making your own,
Yeah, and I think it's the difference between working in the business and on the business.
Sure.
I honestly, ever since we moved into this new studio, I felt like a lot more just working in it versus on it. And I've always been the on it type of guy.
Right.
And it's been an eye-opening process for me. Just being able to dive into like my own mentality and like where I stand and where I want to go and how I want to change and the content I want to create. But yeah, all that to say, I think going through any of these periods of times where you can set back and just evaluate, look at the team members, look at the space, even if you guys just sit here on this couch and like just enjoy the space for a little bit. I've done that at our new space. I would just sit down and take it all in by myself. Awesome. And it's, it's very rewarding as an entrepreneur, but it also makes me realize, all right, I need to get to work because we got a new studio and it's costing some money.
That's right.
I think the in-on is something I've always struggled with because I've felt for a really long time I had to be working in it. Like Cody said, that's what was expected. People expected to see me in the back, like rolling dough and making the pie. And at one point when Cody transitioned over to Pie Provisions and I took over his role at Pie Bar and became kind of the individual working on the business, I felt like that was a step up. I felt like this is me progressing forward and moving forward. And then maybe 3 or 4 months into that, I found myself back in the kitchen working in. And I really struggled with, well, does that mean I'm sliding backwards? Does that mean there's no growth? And I think I'm finally coming to terms and understanding there's different seasons. And some days I'm going to be working in, some days I'm going to be working on, and that accepting that both of those roles are important. And that one is not better than the other. And that just because I'm doing one doesn't mean that I can't transition to the other has been, I think, beneficial for me to understand that and kind of get that.
Do you ever feel any pressure from like your guys' whole shtick is homemade pies, right? And they look homemade. Do you ever feel like if you're not back there in the kitchen, or if customers come in and don't see you actually back there making it, that they think these aren't homemade?
Right.
Sure.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Yes and no. I mean, I think it's our duty as a business to be here. So I think it is also important that we're still here. And we've really, people have said that we're doing business a little differently. I don't think it's that way at all. I think we're doing it just like traditional businesses do. You're in there and you work in the business and you're the one there. When somebody comes in, you're the one there and you greet them. So I think it's still very important that we're still here and we're still working in the business and we still see people when they come in. But everything is still made by hand. I mean, we're building out a separate kitchen now, but other than that, it'll still be made by our team. We're still, that's something, we're not willing to compromise on it. And that's a quality thing, not necessarily a homemade, handmade thing. It's more of a quality of this is the product we want to put out. This is what it takes to get that quality, more or less than just a name and a slogan. This is right.
I think in the beginning, when people would come in and they'd see Cody at the front and me at the back, that's what they became accustomed to. And then Cody moved out from the counter and I stayed in the back. So then they got accustomed to somebody else up front and then still seeing me in the back. And then slowly I came out of the back and they adjusted again. And so I think it just takes time and people adjust. And I don't think we've lost any customers because I'm not the one back there every day. I'm still back there. I mean, well, I guess technically I am back there every day, just not working the same type of job tasks and duties.
What's been cool, so part of our culture, if you will, is very comfort, nostalgia, feeling at home. So when anybody walks through that door, they should be greeted right away. That's something I always did when I worked up front, but that's something now we've trained staff to do. So maybe it's not me here, but there are people that are customers now that probably would not even recognize me up here, but they recognize Vivian, which is our front of house. So what's been cool is maybe that we've just hired great people and maybe it's part of training, but they've kind of taken on that role that maybe it's not the owners, but they treat the business like it is their own. So even though you're walking in and it's not me standing there, it's somebody else that they still associate as a face with Pie Bar. And we've been very fortunate on that end to hire people that are willing to
do that.
Put in that effort.
I was really impressed. One of our team members, so we have weekly staff catch-ups, but then we also do quarterly full team staff meetings. And at this last staff meeting, one of our employees, we allow everybody to kind of speak up and chat with their team. And one of them said, you own this business. Like, you and not Cody and I, like each individual team member, even though technically your name is not on the business license, like you are what creates this business. You are the one that's greeting customers. You are the one that's making the pie. And so treat it that way. You should be so proud of everything you do. And if you do something wrong, own it, acknowledge it, and move on. But that, I think, is what you're saying. Like it's people here, our team takes ownership. Like they become the owners. And so every time somebody comes in and they are greeted by Vivian or even by our back of house, like we're not greeting you because I'm forcing them to greet you. Like they're greeting you because they're so excited you're here, because they want you to be here because this is their place. Like this is their business as well.
We're transparent with mostly everything. So they, it's not just like a buy-in. It's like they're here to be a part of it. And we try and empower people to feel like this is their business too.
Yeah.
Tell them, make decisions. You're never going to get in trouble for making a decision here.
Yeah.
We may...
Unless it's the wrong one.
No, we may say, well, hey, this wasn't the best way to handle it. Let's go over that and let's review. And then next time we'll know. But I'm never going to get mad at someone for making a decision. Yeah. I think that just shows their leadership and it shows their ownership over what they're doing, and we just want to continue to encourage that.
Well, and I think, in 2018, shortly going into 2019, that type of mentality and culture for a brick and mortar is life or death.
Right.
Let's be honest, most of today's market is going online, even in the baked goods industry. A lot of it's going online. So if you don't have someone like Vivian who acts as if she owns the business and greets people like that, your brick and mortar is just going to be a vacant building.
For us, we train our team two things. We say number one is customer service. Number one, no matter what. The pie can be okay. We want really good pie.
Yeah.
But customer service is what's going to set us apart. People, if they come in and have a great slice of pie, but the service is pretty shitty, they're not going to come back. Yeah. Why am I going to pay $4 for a slice of pie when the majority of that experience isn't eating the pie? It's spent in our store interacting with our team. And if that wasn't great, why come back? And so, number one, customer service always. Those guests are the reason we're here.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I think that they've all taken ownership of that.
Customer service is the main ingredient.
It is the main ingredient.
To go completely cheesy with it.
I love that. We're going to steal it.
We opened September 1st, 2015. January 1st, 2016, we went on a piecation. And we traveled around and we went to 20 or so pie shops.
So many pie places.
In 10 days.
Yeah.
And we did it, one, as a small vacation, but two, as a way, like I said, we weren't in the food industry, let alone in the pie industry. So we went around just to kind of experience other places, and we reached out to a bunch of them, and a bunch of them were very kind and let us walk in and walk through their kitchen. But the biggest takeaway from that whole experience was that. We'd go into a place and if we had a bad experience but good pie, it was still a poor experience.
Yeah.
But if we went into a place and we had a great experience as far as atmosphere and a decent pie, it was a great experience. So that was the kind of the big takeaway, is you're not just selling pie, you're selling from the moment they walk in the door until the moment they leave, and that all affects your product.
Yeah.
So you can put out a great product, but if it's not a great experience, then it's a mediocre product.
Have you guys taken any other vacations besides the piecation since September?
We did piecation then, and we did a Pioneer tour the next year. We went out to Seattle and Portland and Montana.
But that was all pie-centric
all
as
pie,
well.
Yeah, all pie-focused. We went to Florida for 3 days this year, but we stayed in a townhouse with Cody's entire family. So
vacation for me.
Yeah. I think it was
so
vacation, but
less of a vacation.
But what's funny is we joke anytime we are out of town, something happens. And so when we were in Florida, I think we had 8 roof leaks.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the time before that, when we were on piecation, a freezer was left open and everything went bad. And then the time before that, the power went out, and just
Well, the first year we had 2 employees in January, so we just closed that first 10 days. The second year, I think we had 4 or 5 employees. It wasn't
I think
many.
We closed still, though.
But we still closed the first, but now we can't close the third. We have too many people. So, no, I guess.
No more piecations.
No, and we did. We stayed in a, we were gone for 1 day and stayed in a cabin. So not as many vacations.
We took a 1-day cabin up to Suches, Georgia, which was very nice.
But what we'll do, so now is hot season for us now. It's picking up and it'll go strong through Christmas. But we'll work really hard up to Thanksgiving and we'll have pickups through Thanksgiving morning, and then we're closed that Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we'll get a 3-day break, and then a couple days after Christmas and a couple days after New Year's.
I don't know what we would do if we had a long time to.
Yeah.
I like to work.
Every time I take I always say this is a telltale sign if you're a true entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So every time I take a vacation, I just freak out.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. I feel weird not working. I mean, and Ray is my business partner, and like these guys work with me all the time. Like, I don't need to be there at all. Like,
right.
At all. Everything will get taken care of.
Right.
Everything will run perfectly smooth. But still, it's just like the itch to
You just
to be
feel,
there and be back
I don't
in
know
it.
about you. I think a lot of entrepreneurs talk about feeling almost like, well, who am I to get to do this? And I've never felt that. I've always felt like I can do this. I feel pretty confident in that. It's more of like guilt for me of like, well, if I'm telling them to be there, I should be there.
Yeah.
So I've never felt like a fraud. I've felt more of like, well, if they're doing it, I should also be doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think vacations for us are hard because it's tough to say, well, y'all do all of this. And I almost find myself like, I think I took a couple of days, a couple weekends ago, but I ended up scheduling in like a serve safe class like over that weekend. And so instead of it being like a fun weekend where I ended up like scheduling in something for work because I felt so guilty that they were here working really hard for something and that I wasn't.
Yeah.
And that's probably something I should work on.
I don't have that issue. Now, granted, like 2 or 3 days, I can do that just fine.
Yeah.
A week, and it's a little excessive, but I can do 2 or 3 days without having.
I don't know if I've ever heard you say, I can't wait to go back to work, but I tend to be the one that's like, are we going to work today?
Yeah. And granted, I've never baked in the kitchen, so that's a little different situation. A lot of the stuff I can handle just from a computer. So it's not necessarily, and it's not necessarily having to be here to get things done. I can get it done.
Yeah.
I just like being here.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think you guys are doing a great job, and like I really enjoyed talking to you. Really, really good content. I always try to like find the main theme or themes in these conversations, and how our conversation first started, I think it was just overly communicating. Like the communication between you guys, because you've known each other since 16. You talking to your team members and like, what do you want to do? What's your goal? And even down to the checklist of how to clean the front of house. Like, it's overly communicating to everyone involved. I think is super important. And then I think my favorite thing about this whole conversation was the quality of life part. Is like, I think that's so hard for people to grasp and to understand that you can scale back everything in your personal life. And when you do that, and if you're a true entrepreneur and you put more into your actual business, you're going to naturally be happier.
Right.
And the momentum is just going to continue to build. So what's next for you guys? We're in Pie Bar.
Yeah.
You guys open in about 35 minutes.
Yeah.
I see Pie Provision stuff everywhere. So what's going on with that?
So we actually have a couple really cool things coming up. So last year we launched our Crust Mix, which is what you see behind us here. October 1st, we launched pie fillings. So we've got 3 flavors coming out, ginger peach, Georgia blueberry, and bourbon pecan. So they're in a jar.
Wow.
And then we also have a kit. So it's the Crust Mix and the fillings together. And those are going to be live here Saturday, hopefully.
Weekend. We're trying to ship out all of our wholesale orders before we fulfill here. So we'll see what happens.
That's with Pie Provisions, which is really for us on that kind of changed the game a little bit for us because we just had the Crust Mix first and we kind of learned what people wanted based off of that and went towards that. We're building a separate kitchen for Pie Bar just down the street, which is really going to up our preparation and that kind of all that other process stuff we were talking about. We've been very fortunate and haven't really seeked out large wholesale orders because we stayed so busy with retail. But in an effort to diversify sales and not put all our eggs in one basket, we're building out a separate kitchen to help house a lot of that stuff. I don't know anything other than that. There's a lot going on right now.
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
We're excited about the holiday season, and we're excited about
Thanksgiving's coming.
Yeah, November 1st is when you can start ordering pie.
Yeah. How seasonal is the pie business? Is it?
For us, I mean, it is, but it's not. So what we've found is we find ways to balance it. So like we'll push pot pie very hard in the beginning of the year to offset everybody's sweet diets and everything else, and then. Pie Day is March 14th, which is our biggest single day of the year. So we kind of like try and limp along till we get to there. But For us, it really hasn't. I mean, it's slower, but it's not like nobody's coming in.
Yeah.
You know?
And I'd say, too, the longer we've found that we've been here, the more people have accepted us year round.
Yeah.
So obviously our first January is a lot slower than our second January. And then our third January was pretty standard compared to the rest of the months. And so I think we found that as we continue to grow and grow our roots deeper in the community, that people will eat pie in January, just like they will in November.
Yeah.
And that's really special and fortunate and cool. And we're really lucky that when people come to town, they want to bring their friends and family here, and that people visit people year round. And when people get a good grade in school, they want to come here and celebrate. Or we've had people when they've had breakups come here and not celebrate. We've been able to create that connection with people through pie, and it doesn't matter what month of the year it is. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and we learned too early on, like if you're not talking about it, your business, if you're not talking, who is? If you're not promoting pie, well, who is? So doing that and making sure we get out, and it's a strange thing to promote yourself. It's something you kind of have to get over. We don't have a PR person, so we kind of like have to ring our own bell from time to time, which is kind of a strange thing to get over and do, but if we're not, then who is?
It has to be done.
And a big shout out, like Lauren said, to our community. I mean, they've always supported us, and we try and do our best to help support back as much as we can. So, thanks for that.
Yeah, well, you guys are absolutely outstanding. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, this is like our first episode back, and getting to talk to you guys as the first one back is so refreshing. I'm pumped to do more, and best wishes and all the success in the world.
Thank you very much for having us on.
Thanks for having us on. Let's go eat some pie.
Let's do it. Perfect.